Okay, so here's a fun fact. From the evidence we have, more or less the average age at which people in the ancient world used to get married was 20 years old. For the medieval period, it was around 23 years old. In the 1900s, it was around 24 years old. And right now, it's almost the age of 30 at which people decide to get married on average. So this must have gotten you thinking that the average age at which people get married is rising. But it's actually not that simple. If we look at some more numbers, on average, about 20% of young Americans don't want to get married. And over 25% of Americans don't want to have kids, even if they do get married. And for some places like South Korea, the numbers are even worse, with over 40% not wanting to get married and over 45% not wanting to have kids. In fact, the global population in the year 1900 was around 1.6 billion, and in the year 2000, it was 6.1 billion. Right now, it's 8.2 billion, and by the year 2080, it will peak at only around 10.3 billion. Then by the year 2100, it will become 10.2 billion. Yes, it will literally start decreasing, and which generation was it that brought this change? That literally reversed human instincts that otherwise so far every generation before was following normally, having kids and spreading and all? Yes, it's Gen Z. Now, before you allow any of your baby boomer uncles to just call your generation lazy and call it a day, let me tell you that it's his and his generation's doings to begin with that the entire next generation has started becoming Ryan Gosling from Blade Runner. And yes, technology and the internet did also overstimulate us to a point where everything feels pointless, but it's definitely not just the fault of that goddamn phone. The average wage of an entry-level job in America is about $3,000. And voila, the average rent in any big city in the US is $2,000 to $3,000. So at the age of 22, the same age range at which people before you used to get married and start making babies and stuff, you just graduated college instead and are now drowning in debt because of that student loan you took and will be paying off till your mid-40s. So anyways, you just graduated and were looking for a job when you heard about a sudden layoff. Companies are laying off hundreds of thousands of employees just to increase their share prices by a few decimals. So in the already struggling job market, your competition isn't just with freshers like yourself, but with actual experienced workers that have just been laid off and are now looking for work. And amidst all of this, your boomer relatives at a family gathering can't stop themselves from asking stupid questions like, when are you getting married? At your age, I already had both Timmy and Jerry. And yes, at your age, he probably did have both Timmy and Jerry. What he conveniently forgets to mention is that the house he bought for 3 potatoes and a handshake is now worth $600,000. He forgets to mention that college was cheap enough that a summer job could actually make a dent in the fees. He forgets to mention that when he walked into a place asking for a job, there was a decent chance someone would actually hire him instead of directing him to a website where his application would be automatically rejected by a machine before a human being ever looked at it. So are any of you guys familiar with Spider-Man? If yes, then you probably have heard more or less at least once the quote from Ben Parker that with great powers comes great responsibilities. But right now, you don't even have to have great powers or just any powers. You can be as powerless as a tapeworm and still be bombarded with huge responsibilities. You're exactly one minor accident away from total financial ruin. In fact, medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy in America. So outside of your student loan, just simple groceries, probably thinking of saving up for a house, maybe thinking of your parents' retirement as Social Security is drying up. You also have to manage to not have any health issues along the way, or you're simply just done. So unlike the previous generations, we simply can't just spawn a bunch of tiny humans around and hope for the best. We actually care, and we don't want to bring another human being into the mess of a reality we have. So no, Gen Z didn't wake up one morning and collectively decide that marriage and children were cringe. They didn't secretly gather in a cave somewhere and vote to end human reproduction. Most people still want companionship. Most people still want love. Most people still want families. The difference is that previous generations reached those things at 22, while this generation is trying to reach basic stability at 30. Humans aren't defying instincts. In fact, we are standing up to it. Humans have always been too good at adapting, and we are just doing that.